until it fell like hell off.
This is a mashup of Sons of Anarchy and Ghostbusters. So this shirt I got, like 7 years ago. So it's been I've been rocking it ever since. So welcome everyone to the Heroes World Quarantine Podcast. We are here today to discuss Ghostbusters Afterlife. We have just finished behind the scenes a podcast where I was very heated on Cowboy Bebop. So this might be some hot takes coming. I'm still feeling the heat of that Gong show. Rob was sleepy time.
Yeah, I'm trying to wake up.
After talking about A Wheel of Time. So just if you're wondering, not from Cowboy Bebop, Rob was sleeping. It was from A Wheel of Time. Here we go. We're going to talk about the movie that just dropped that we all saw, Ghostbusters Afterlife. This is directed by Jason Reitman, whose father has Ivan, who directed both of the original ones, was involved as executive producer. It stars many people, the world's sexiest man, Paul Rudd, and a bunch of other people, a couple kids and whatnot. So we're going to go into a review of this movie, which I think is very split down the middle in terms of this. So the young characters, Finn Wolfhard, which is fine. The MVP of this movie, McKenna Grace, and then Carrie Coon, who is one of the voices in Endgame. She plays Proxima.
Okay.
Yeah, but she's been in lots of other things as well. She was in Leftovers and
but she was in the Avengers movies, and Paul Rudd, and then there's a couple things happening, but we'll get to the spoiler part. We don't want to ruin that spoilers. And again, if you haven't seen the movie, we'll do a non-spoiler first. As a reminder, I told Rob, I'm like, FYI, there are 2 after credit scenes. Don't leave the theater. So Rob at least listened to me on that one. John, did you know there were 2 after credit scenes? Because I think by the time you saw it on Thursday.
I think I saw it before you guys. Yeah, I think I saw it before you guys. So I didn't have the very a very much appreciated Rob update. So much so that the people I went to in the theater were like, "Yo, did Rob say there was anything after this?" And I was like, "I didn't see it yet." So I got to look it up manually. And is there Ghostbusters Afterlife end credits? Yeah, so I did watch them.
Okay, good. Okay, so John, give us your thoughts, non-spoiler, of Ghostbusters Afterlife. What I will cue you in. This takes place in a small town. The grandchildren of Egon move into his palatial estate in the middle of nowhere. The family is broke. They have to move to this small town in Somerville, Oklahoma, and they leave off. And as the trailers would say, they start finding the Ghostbusters things, and things ensue. The kid's teacher is Paul Rudd, and there we go. John, what are your thoughts on Ghostbusters Afterlife? Because
overall thoughts is watch it if you like the original Ghostbusters. This is a very fitting update / tribute to that original film. So there's no question about it. I think you have to see it. I think I've noticed a lot of people did make this a priority and have gone to see this, whereas a lot of the other movies we've done, people are like, I'm going to catch it later. I think a lot of people did make sure they saw this just because of its, I don't know if it's our age group maybe, or just the place that the original Ghostbusters has in our culture, that they made it a point that they had to go see this. So yeah, definitely some breakout acting, like Stu mentioned, the MVP, the character who plays Phoebe, 100% star of the movie. I could have watched another 20 minutes of this character at least. If there's some type of extended director's cut. And all the supporting cast, I think everyone just did an overall good job. I won't talk anything spoilery, other than to say, I think it was really good, and you definitely want to stick around for those end credit scenes.
Rob?
Yeah, so non-spoiler. Listen, we just talked about, if you haven't looked at our Cowboy Bebop and Wheel of Time reviews, you can definitely go that. But one of the themes in Cowboy Bebop that I mentioned was that it's a love letter to an existing IP. And that actually holds true to Ghostbusters Afterlife as well. The start of the show, Stu said it could be a bit of a divisive movie, and I think that it will be. I think there's going to be fans who are so in love with the original, they're like, I don't want this. And there's going to be other ones who are like, yeah, man, I'm cool. I'm accepting this new this love letter in this new direction. I personally quite enjoyed it. Here's one thing I'm really happy about, and this is not spoilery, is that Paul Rudd was featured a lot in the promotional build up to this movie, and this is not a Paul Rudd movie. And I say that not because I'm not a fan. I'm a big fan of Paul Rudd.
I thought that was spoilery.
No, but what I'm saying is don't go into this thinking, hey, I'm watching, Paul Rudd in
the sexiest man alive.
Yeah, it wasn't that at all. And I think it's great. I think his scenes, he didn't overstate it. And it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed this. If you watch this movie and you have feelings of a little bit of the Goonies, a little bit of an 80s vibe, even a little bit of the opening of Karate Kid moving cities because of undue circumstances, you're going to really enjoy this. And if you are a fan of Ghostbusters, I think you will enjoy this. And so, yeah, I'm down. I'm down on this movie. I quite enjoyed it.
It is.
You.
It is teetering the balance between nostalgia, member berries, and like it's kind of the member berries if you watch South Park, where it's like member Ecto 1, member Slimer, remember these things like from your childhood. I think we have all of the children of the 80s and 90s remember watching Ghostbusters a million times as a kid, either on VHS or on TV. I remember my uncle taking my brother and me to watch Ghostbusters 2 in the theater. It wasn't the best Ghostbusters, but my God, I remember that movie. Like, I loved all the Ghostbusters 1. It didn't matter. Ghostbusters 2 was not great, but Vigo, like there's a thing to Vigo that like.
Oh, hello, Vigo. I do what you asked me, Vigo. Okay.
So great.
Did you ever play the video game
for Genesis? Yes, the Genesis one was amazing.
And you're like, why am I shooting blobs of stuff instead of using a Ghostbusters stream? You're like,
there's a cool the Genesis game was way better than the Nintendo one where you had to drive around the car, but the Genesis one was like you got to go to the store and you bought stuff and you went from place to place. Anyways, I have also fond memories of my brother and me playing Ghostbusters on the Sega Genesis, and that game like just rocked. So having the two
so you didn't go back to the Commodore 64 era
no.
of Ghostbusters, which is terrible.
Jason Reitman and Ivan Reitman in it was helpful. I feel the story was very loosey-goosey still. It relies a lot of us filling the blanks of like our love for Ghostbusters, and the little kid who plays podcasts is great because he's super fun. I think it's like Logan Kim. So there are moments where like the little kids shine, but intrinsically when a movie it's about little kids, you're weighing a lot on those kids. And as much as I appreciate Canadian Finn Wolfhard, like he was okay, like give or take, he was fine.
But again, I'm glad about that though.
It's fine. It's straddling the line between trying to get new people involved and then getting us old guys to like feel something in these old broken hearts of ours of nostalgia.
Digging away at the plaque inside of our arteries.
It's hard for me to put in the words. This movie is not great. It's fine. And without going spoiler, we'll go to it momentarily. It's fine. The last act really gets you to where you want to go. But the first two acts are fine. The third act is all nostalgic and it makes the movie great. The end credits make it even better. But like we talked about before, is that worth to get to good to great? All that stuff in the beginning. It's like that's the question. You sacrifice all the time to watch a story, like a full 1:30, an hour 30 minutes to get to the good part, and then wait to the after credits to get to the great part. Like that's the question.
I don't know. I think you're leaning more on the nostalgia. You want to see the old school, where Rob's point before, the whole Goonies aspect at the beginning, I actually quite enjoy.
And it's fine. But again, it's I think this does a better job. And what the problem with the last Ghostbusters film is fine. Like I rewatched it recently. It's not a bad movie.
No.
The issue is when you don't and not fan service, but you don't respect the original stuff, which is what many people thought it didn't do correctly. And basically like, those other Ghostbusters never existed.
Yeah.
All of a sudden that puts everyone on guard going, wait a second, the childhood that we know, you're telling me that doesn't exist anymore. So people were just like, not my Ghostbusters. And this is like, okay, well, hey, your other Ghostbusters are there because Egon, you know, RIP, he's gone, but this is all the original stuff. But these are new people. So you've already disarmed a lot of fan bases that Rob, when he mentioned a lot of people dressed up for his viewing, a lot of people dressed up for my viewing. Like when you go to a fan convention, there's tons of people that have their own proton packs, they have their own vests, they have their own costumes ready to go. So a lot of people are already on board.
Well, it's the easiest costume for people to cosplay in because you don't have to be in shape. You don't have to wear a spandex Spider-Man suit, right? And worry about your junk. You gotta wear a jumpsuit and I got cardboard box on your back with a vacuum hose. That's it. That's the easiest cosplay.
Well, there was only 8 people in my theater when I went.
Yeah.
Well, ours was packed, and there was a family full-on cosplay of quite a few people.
Good
cosplay. So I was happy to see that.
So okay,
I was not.
John, what would? And I think if you enjoy the original properties, you will enjoy this one, especially if you stay to the end. So that's my without spoiler review. John, what do you rate this movie out of 10?
So out of 10, and we'll get into like the nitty gritty later, but I would give it like entertainment value sitting in the theater watching it. We watched it on the big AVX screen. We got upgraded to D-box seats because for some reason our theater has no heat or something like that, so they had to move us to another theater. It was really bizarre. Happenstance before Ghost Riders, but 8 out of 10.
Rob.
There are some issues with this, and so I will definitely touch on the problems that I have with this movie. I got to be honest with you, as much as I enjoyed it, I'm bordering between a 7.5 and 8, but I'll probably give it an 8. I'll give it an 8.
Wow, generous.
Stu, you're in with a 2?
No, it's not a 2 because at the end of the day, I enjoyed. Again, McKenna Grace was so good, and of the kid actors, and then Logan Kim was good. Really good as the Best Friend podcast. It's kind of like Rob was saying, the Data character from Goonies. It's like your nickname is basically like, you know, like the gizmos that he had, like slick shoes, like all the stuff that you remember from Goonies. I'm gonna say I'm giving it a 7.
Okay.
Which is not a bad 6.
It's not a bad.
It's possible. I think the end of the fan service and whatnot, like it left me with a good feeling. Unlike other movies where the third act is really rough. I think the third act actually was the best part of this movie. And the third act was so good that I'm like, wow, like normally these type of movies, like act 1 and 2 are strong and act 3 falls apart. Act 3 was so good where I'm just like, can we not have got another extra 10 minutes? Like this is the part where I'm like, drag this out. I want a little bit more. Can we get a teeny bit more? And that was where I think that's where it left me wanting more. But you know, there are a lot of problems with this movie nonetheless, and I couldn't forgive all of it. As much as nostalgia took me over at the end, and I was giddy and laughing, and I loved it. So needless to say, if you love Ghostbusters, go watch the movie. Like, I don't know if it's theater worthy. John, is it theater worthy, or should you watch it on VOD?
Well, I did enjoy the theater experience. I think for this particular movie, you can have it would be fine for you to watch at home. It doesn't quite go as crazy as some of the other things we've seen this year.
Rob?
Yeah, I agree. You know, as much as I enjoy this movie, and I'm always a proponent of going to see it, if you are looking at your hard-earned bucks and you're like, do I spend it on Ghostbusters? You know what? If you haven't seen Dune, go see that in the theater. I think that lends itself to a big screen. This could go either way. So I used to say that with the caveat of that, I enjoyed it in the theater, but if you're on the fence, just wait 45 days and you'll be able to rent it.
It's one of those things where Ghostbusters 1 and 2 was a comedy, sci-fi, horror kind of thing, where you want to be in the theater because you get the energy of the crowd. People are laughing. There's lots of stuff going on. This movie is not that movie. It is not a comedy, like, you know, jokes are flying all the time and goofy things are happening, a la Ghostbusters 1, or even Ghostbusters 2 tried to do it with the over-the-top Vigo stuff. Like, I remember as a kid, there were some people laughing in the theater still but it was still like they were trying to pivot a little away from the comedy in some aspects, but it was still like a thing where it was, you know, it was nice to be in a theater of people. This is like
It's more of a horror.
Yeah, it was like a very respectful, like, oh, we understand you love Ghostbusters and we're not going to tread on that. So here's this movie that we're trying to balance. And
But-
yeah, I don't think it warrants the same theater experience. I think it's a very personal, like, I want to watch this theater with myself, or I watch it at home with my friends and family members and experience it. It's not like it's a theater, like we go there to laugh together. I feel so that's how it is. So let's go to full spoilers. So here we go. Spoilers are all happening right now. John, spoilers. Ghostbusters Afterlife. John, in the third act, we were all waiting for it. We saw all the things, and we're waiting for Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Ernie Hudson. We're waiting for it. When it finally happened, and they showed up, John, were you excited? Did it matter to you?
Yeah, see, so this is where I think we're gonna differ, why I think maybe you didn't enjoy this as much as me. But I actually quite liked the new cast so much so that when the original cast showed up, I was like, this is very cool, but I wouldn't have minded if this didn't happen. Like, you do want to see these guys back in action. I actually thought they were going to show up much earlier with the way that they were teasing these cameos and stuff, and I'm actually very happy that they didn't, because they would have definitely taken away from the story later on. But it was very cool when they showed up. I thought it was cool that they didn't just imagine if when they come, they show up, they cross the streams, and they win the movie, and then it ends. But they didn't do that. They kind of like let it kind of be a blend of all the characters coming together to win this movie. So yeah, I did think it was very cool. And then I was feeling the tears coming on when they brought in the ghost Egon. And then the funny scene where they cut and he's like helping her hold the thing, and the other Ghostbusters are like kind of like looking over, like that was a really, like, first Ernie Hudson like kind of looks over and you're like, what the hell? And then they all kind of, they're just like, what's going on? So I don't know. I imagine it was pretty emotional day on set for them. So I thought, yeah, as far as endings go, I think that was a good way to combine all these elements together.
Rob?
Okay, so yeah, I'm just going to give an overview of what I thought of this. And I'm going to end it with where John kind of finished off there. First of all, the movie looks great. It's shot all in Alberta. This was supposed to come out pre-pandemic, like last July, I think. I think it benefits, to be very honest with you, having had to wait, because I feel like the feels that you get in this movie at the end reward you for having to wait. I'm just going to give you my negatives, though, is that this movie is called Ghostbusters, much like Ghostbusters 2. There's very.
He was asking about the ending, Rob. Your reaction to the ending.
Oh, is that what you asked? Was the reaction to the ending? Oh, sorry. Okay,
Rob doesn't.
Here's my entire synopsis.
Okay, fine. All right. For the ending, so
you had the feels when they showed up. That was, I'm like, when they finally showed up.
Sorry.
Did that matter to you? That was
yeah. So I anticipated they were going to show up in that final act. I kind of figured that's what the setup was. We knew Bill Murray had shot. We knew that they were there. I'm glad, like John said, that they didn't win the day. It didn't take the OG members to be able to defeat Gozer. But the whole ending is really overshadowed by the inclusion of Harold Ramis, who passed away in 2014. They had permission from his family to be able to use his likeness. If anybody remembers, Knocked Up, he played Seth Rogen's dad. So you could see that Harold Ramis was a bit of a more fuller individual by that point. And so they used that type of the face for Egon. You knew that, I think we could all forecast that he was going to show up as a ghost, because throughout the course of the movie, you don't see him. You see like the things moving in the background. So, but when you still saw it, you knew it was coming. But when you saw it and you saw Phoebe, digging in, little 12-year-old Phoebe digging into the ground with, the proton trying to shoot Gozer. And then all of a sudden the camera pans and you see like the blue hue, I'm getting the shivers thinking about it, and it pans over and it's, up, and then you see it's Egon, he's looking down. It was just phenomenal. Everybody in the theater was just like mesmerized. And the one thing I loved about it, and it's not just, that's not the only scene, like he's there, as John said, right next to the original three. but he never speaks a word. They didn't use any dialogue from any past movies. They didn't use a voice actor like Ross Marquand to be able to mimic his voice. There was zero dialogue. Right. There was zero dialogue. He nodded when the people were talking to him, saying, "We miss you," and "I'm sorry." He nodded. That moment at the end where, they defeat Gozer, and everybody's looking at him, and he just nods, and he's acknowledging everybody, saying nice things, and he gives Carrie Coon, his daughter, the hug, and you see him dissipate up into the sky, and as the camera goes up, as his particles fly up into wherever, it says "For Harold," and it's cut to black. That's the end of the movie. You're going to be very hard pressed to find a better ending for a movie in the last 5 years than that ending. And so, despite however many problems there might be throughout the movie, and if you're wishy-washy on it, and if you're a huge diehard Ghostbusters fan and you're like, "This is crap," you cannot allow that last 20 minutes to not get you in the feels and bump up that movie for you. So
the reveal of Gozer as Olivia Wilde, John, were you surprised when you're like, "Oh, that's somebody that looks like Olivia Wilde"? Did you know that was her? Or
I went to see it with my good buddy Pat, and as soon as she shows up, I didn't recognize her at all. He's like, "Is that Olivia Wilde?" And I'm like, "Get out of here, no way." And then after the movie's over, he looks it up and he's like, "Yeah, uncredited Olivia Wilde." And I'm
uncredited,
like, "How the hell are you supposed to know that?"
Yeah, she looks like the original Ghost. She kind of has yeah. So
the same facial
the
feature,
Gozer depiction, with the makeup. Whoever in the makeup department did a really good job. And then I like how they did the voice. That they kind of like the whole idea, I guess, is Gozer is male and female, so it would kind of be like female, and then it would slide back into male voice. So I thought it was really cool.
J.K. Simmons at the end. What'd you think, John, as Shangor? As we know from all the other Ghostbuster movies, he was ridiculous.
What was that? I didn't even know what the hell happened there. And then that guy got like shredded up pretty quick.
He was the guy that originally did the architect that built a building in New York.
Oh, is that who he's supposed to be?
He's the leader of the cult of Gozer, and he's in the original movie. He was the guy that built that building to have the way that the buildings where they use
the metal and all that stuff. So it's very a lot of cool tie-ins. I guess we're gonna get
real metal, tungsten, as many guys' wedding rings are made of at this time. Rings that are almost unbreakable steel. So it's a very expensive resource. Okay, so we got to that thing. I think to the point, the rumors of always Ghostbusters when they're talking about bringing it back was back in the day when Harold Ramsey was alive. It was the reverse. It was going to be Bill Murray was always like, "I don't want to do it. If you're going to do it, I'll be the ghost." And Bill Murray's like, "I'm done. I don't need to do it." And I think it kind of, once the passing of Harold Ramsey kind of pushed even Bill to be like, "Okay, I guess I'll do this," because he's reclusive. He doesn't do anything. So it took all of them to call him and be like, you got to do this. Like, you don't do much, but you got to do this. And it was nice to see Bill Murray back, which leads us to the first cutscene. So at the very end of this movie, spoilers, you already saw it already, and it's a Sigourney Weaver, and you're like, "Wait a second," and then boom!
I know
the scene, with her and Sigourney Weaver, and it was an ode to the first Ghostbusters movie, where it's like, "What are the cards?" And that was the one. I think who was the woman in it? I think it was like, was it Daryl Hannah or someone else?
No, it wasn't Daryl Hannah, but
somebody.
It's Daryl Hannah.
Where they were reading the cards, John. Do you remember that from Ghostbusters 1? Did you have any feelings?
Yeah, we just rewatched it, so it was pretty funny to see that pop up. But as far as cutscenes go, other than Sigourney Weaver looked fantastic. Unfortunately, Bill Murray, I don't know if he just decided not to look as good. I feel like he could have looked better in that scene.
Well, he's old, John. I don't know, like
but his hair was like all over. I feel like he could have looked better, but he's probably like
he's 71. That's all you gotta say.
How old is Sigourney Weaver though?
She is. She is. Oh no, she's 72.
That's what I'm saying. Sigourney looked fantastic, and
Bill Murray lived
and Bill Murray kind of looked like he just rolled into the set and recorded that last minute. That was a nice little tease. I felt like it didn't really add anything story-wise to it though, other than seeing that character.
It just
back.
shows.
Yeah, but you're burying the lead. Stu just mentioned it. Like, you're sitting there saying special appearances by Annie Potts, Dan Aykroyd, Ernie Hudson,
when the credit
Bill Murray,
credits scrolled past,
and
and we were
Sigourney
like,
Weaver.
Sigourney
You're like,
Weaver.
Sigourney
We were like,
Weaver. And then all of a
yeah,
sudden
we
the
turned to each
scene
other. We were
pops
like,
up.
was
Yeah.
Sigourney Weaver in here? And then it immediately cuts to
Yeah.
her holding the card. Yeah, so
How
it was a
about that?
funny because that's how the original movie opens with the card
Yeah,
trick, basically,
well,
right?
partially, but like it was fun to see them together. Fun to see Bill Murray on the other side being electroshocked. The Me Too thing was kind of like, now you hear it's like you basically used it to pick up women, and Sigourney was calling them out and basically
Yeah.
electrocuting.
They kind of like did a nice throwback
to see that
like that was
portion of
not
it.
acceptable behavior.
Yeah, that's
So
not
that was
acceptable.
kinda cool.
That's he's being like, now it's retribution, and then it gets to cutscene 2, John. So in cutscene 2, were you expecting that? Because this is the big piece of this Ghostbuster film. It's like, yeah, the kids are there, but this opens up branches for the kids to continue doing it, or as we always knew, New York City is such a big part of the Ghostbusters, and now you see that Winston, who was the street smart person, who's going to be the one who was like, I'm in it for the, does it pay? Was always going to be the one that was going to be, well, everyone else was academic.
He was there for the paycheck. Yeah,
he was always going to be the one that was. I knew it made sense that he was the only one that could keep money and be there. So him being
so I already knew
very
something was coming, because in interviews and things like that, they say that Winston kind of gets a proper due, because there is some controversy over him in the original first movie. So I knew there was something coming for that character, because I feel like what he did in the actual movie wasn't there. So I knew like something's gonna happen. So it was very cool to see. But I it was kind of funny because they said that someone bought the old firehouse and they turned it into a Starbucks.
Yeah.
So I'm like, did that Starbucks then go away and they renovated it back to look like a broken down firehouse? And now he's opening back up. He's like, I want it to be as it originally was. Get this Starbucks out of here. But I guess it was just, people assumed it became Starbucks. But it was cool to see them pull up, and I guess they're gonna maybe blow up this whole Ghostbusters thing, or that's their plan. But do you want to talk a little bit about a possible sequel to this? Is that what
we'll talk about the second? But John,
yeah, okay.
So
yeah, I love to see like
sequence, because sequence 1 just shows that Peter and Diana are happy. Like that's all it shows. It's like they're together. They were together on the thing like that. The whole thing was like, will they? Won't they? The answer is solved. They're together. They're not separate. Part 2 is that this opens up potential sequels for either the kids or a whole bunch of new people to do a Ghostbusters film, because
so it opens the door, and we'll get to the sequel talk. But I really like Ernie Hudson. Like on the rewatch, I really liked watching that character show up in the Ghostbusters and be this everyman, and like, I'm here for a paycheck, or like I want a separate lawyer from these guys are bonkers, all the kind of stuff that he did in the original movie. So
before we
Ernie Hudson also looked fantastic. So I don't know.
Before we go, you mentioned the controversy. The controversy, I don't know if it is a controversy, but I'm probably sure you talked about it on the Sidekick Show. Originally, it was written for Eddie Murphy with more lines, and what happened was that when Eddie Murphy couldn't do it, Ernie Hudson signed on, but he thought he was going to go all the dialogue that Eddie had, and they're like, no, we're scaling it back. You're not Eddie Murphy. So he kind of felt a bait and switch. He's like, oh, this is my break. I get
there was some type of agreement made that he understood that he was going to be in the film more, and it didn't happen. And that's the way the controversy is, where he's cutting of it. Like, you guys said this, and everybody on the opposite side was like, we don't know what you're talking about. Nobody said that, So yeah, so
you just assumed
nice
he's going to get all the stuff from Eddie, and they're like, yeah, that's not the case.
You're like, you're not even Charlie Murphy.
So that's the quote controversy. But to him, he said this was a very good experience because he got, a transformative experience, because he got to do at the end. He was the most, solvable, the most wealthy, the most and he'll be in movies if he wants to be, as the president / CEO of Ghostbusters as the lead, and then everyone else will basically every cop procedural. He'll be the curmudgeon chief who's like, Spangler, what are you doing out there on the streets? Like, you broke this many things. You know how much it's going to cost me? Like, this is what's leading into this. Like, one guy who's the foot into the old, because maybe Dan Aykroyd and him will be it because Bill Murray's probably out. The two of them helping the new young guys be Ghostbusters as to the future of that. John, would you want to see this movie where it's maybe Paul Rudd and a bunch of kids with Ernie Hudson and Dan Aykroyd in New York City fighting ghosts?
Yeah, so a possible sequel. So don't know if we're going to delve back into the original movie, but the Phoebe character, definitely the shining light of this movie. But the magic is at the beginning of that movie. The whole Goonies coming of age, finding out who she is. The whole like, oh, she holds up her glasses, like the whole kind of like nerd or whatever finding their place, or the science nerd finding their place. I don't know if they can replicate that for a second movie. But as an actress, I guess might as well give her the chance. So yeah, I'd definitely be interested in watching some type of follow-up. Although I question whether they can achieve the same magic as discovering all this stuff, and all of a sudden they're just going to be straight up Ghostbusters. I don't know if the magic's going to be there.
Okay. Rob?
Which question would you like me to answer?
Whatever you want. Go for it. You don't listen to me anyways. Go where you want.
No, I do. I'm going to go back to your original
question. Go with your full
John.
Movie review now.
No, I'm going to go back to John.
In the beginning.
You asked about the second teaser. So
end credit.
End credit. I didn't realize, I didn't read any of the stuff that John had mentioned about Ernie Hudson giving any, information. I just knew that they were all going to be coming back. So I was very surprised to see what direction they went in. I hope they don't make him out to be this corporate villain, though. Like in the next one, I hope that they don't. Like, I want him to want to continue the legacy, but not be a corporate. I don't want him to be Jeff Bezos, right? Oh, we're going to monetize Ghostbusters Inc. and become the villain of number 2. Corporate greed. I don't want that. And I
Ghostbusters, money is good, greed is good. Is that
I felt like there was a weird, his whole entire, bringing the car back to New York, owning the building, bring it in. Obviously we see the shot of the containment unit flashing red, which is never a good sign. But it just seemed something just didn't seem, it seemed off about it. So maybe I'm wrong and my spidey sense was malfunctioning, but something just seemed a little bit that it could kind of go either way. When you have a movie like this where you need to pay homage to the original, you could do what many movies have come before it have done, is be a carbon copy. And I'm glad that they didn't make it a carbon copy. I'm glad that it is, again, a love letter to the 80s. You can't replicate the 80s lingo. You can't take Cowboy Bebop from 1999 and apply and use the dialogue in 2021. So you can't take 1984 dialogue and whatnot and apply it to this. I just wish there was more ghosts. We got Muncher.
Ghost in the diner. There's a ghost.
We got the guy in the diner.
But think about the original ghost. You saw most of them flying. So you got the ghost in the diner, you got Muncher, but most of them were flying up ahead and stuff. I just wish we had gotten.
I think there's a physical toll, as you mentioned, Rob, very eloquently before, about like you needed their kids, and that's a lot of physical exertion. That's why they had it in the car strapped in, because that should push you back. So if all the kids were doing it, it wouldn't have the moment where she's using it against Gozer, that like she's standing up, like it's every time they use it they flip back because they have the strength of a little kid. So I get it, the ghost. But we got the best ghost of all, which was Egon. So like that is the ghost of all ghosts. So does it matter? At any rate, I mean, listen, I quite enjoyed the movie. I thought it was a lot of fun. I thought there are obviously some issues with it. I will say this, it's a 2-hour movie. It feels like a 2-hour movie. Like, it's a little bit bloated. They definitely could have done some decent editing in the middle chunk to kind of tighten it up a little bit. If you've seen the commercials and you saw the little Stay Puft Marshmallow stuff, I mean, listen, kids in my theater were going crazy for that. They loved it. But what you saw in the commercials is what you see in the movie. There's not much more else. Yeah. I will say, though, the one thing I really liked about that scene in the Walmart, is that they did a practical effect with one of the Hounds of Hell, right? They didn't go all CGI, which is very easy to do. They, just like the original Ghostbusters, they had the practical dog that was there, like, made up. And I was like, this is great. Like they went as practical as they could, much like the original, so I was really happy with that. I thought Jason Reitman did a fantastic job. Again,
This is a property where in 2016 people were pitchforks were out and they wanted to burn, everybody down associated with the girl version of Ghostbusters. I thought it was an okay movie, as Stu said. I think this is a daunting task. Jason Reitman's coming in, taking a beloved property and putting a new spin on it, and literally putting the entire plot on the shoulders of children, and they pulled it off. And that takes a lot for an entire movie to rest on the shoulders of a 12-year-old girl and a 10-year-old boy, right? Like, I thought that was great. So, yeah, I'm really happy with it.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I think we forget that in a time when Ghostbusters 1 and 2 came out, it wasn't cool to be the nerd. It wasn't cool to be the science person. This really someone with glasses as a hero. It didn't exist back then. It wasn't nerd culture like we know now. So to have the main protagonist as 3 scientists who are doing it and then one streetwise person was such new ground at that point that it encouraged kind of what people did about science, like Star Trek. It was that thing where it's grounded but got people really involved. So that's one of the legacies of it. And to your point, this same thing with these kids, it's John, to your point, they're so strong in the aspect of like, they're all loners, they're trying to figure it out. And I think, Rob, you can't replicate the same difficulties as a child in the 80s, as a child as a 90s, as a child in the new millennium. So it does have a new way of dealing with things. So it was really good. And to that point, again, I was surprised it worked. And to your point, Rob, if you went that slapstick route, you're asking these kids to replicate what Bill Murray, Harold Ramis, and like they had 20 years of comedy under their belt. They're like the top of their
game at the time
in terms of comedy, and you can't ask them to ad lib and like bring in stuff off to fix it. So there is something to it that is very difficult for them to emulate and replicate. So it's to your point, you had to go in that direction, and these kids did a good job of it, because if you did the other way, you're having these kids like joke around and be like, basically do your poor man's interpretation of Bill Murray. It was going to be even worse. So and to the point, I think really, I think Bill Murray probably had the most nostalgic / like, we all know the story that Bill Murray probably came back, 1, as a favorite, but 2, the story of him and Harold Ramis is, and I'm sure some people know this already, is that after Groundhog's Day, which is one of my favorite movies of all time, they stopped talking to each other, like, for 20 years.
Yeah.
And Harold Ramis and him, and Harold, I think, contributed to himself as he had some things going on, and Bill Murray probably made it not as friendly to do that movie. And they didn't talk for 20 years until Harold was really sick. And it wasn't for Bill Murray's brother to be like, you got to do this. He's on his, essentially, Brian Doyle Murray was like, you got to go. He's on his deathbed. So Bill Murray showed up with a box of donuts and a police escort to Harold Ramis' house. And by then, Harold couldn't talk very much. And basically, Bill hashed it out for 7 hours. And they talked in same like the movie where Harold couldn't talk. He was just nodding and giving his kind of thing. And that's how they patched up their relationship at the very end, because these two had been together and doing so much for so long. So I'm sure it's bittersweet for everyone in that movie. And I don't think it was, again, I don't expect to see Bill Murray ever again in this, which is fine. I think he's Bill Murray is aloof in that way. I'm totally happy to see the other characters going forward. And I'll be happy to see another movie where it's maybe a comedy as well. You bring in more Paul Rudd and more of a couple adults to mix with the kids, because really you'd be insane to let a kid, run the streets of New York with basically a nuclear device on their back and be like, all right, go ahead and do it.
Right.
So you would have to wait a few more years for the kids to get older. Maybe they can be there as like interns to like look and learn, but you can't have them on the streets doing stuff. That'd be a little insane as well. I think there are also rules and health and safety codes about kids running around with ecto packs and running around. So
that's why I question if they can do a second movie and have the same magic.
It will be different. I think you can incorporate these kids in a few years from now as older, because again, they're what, for like by the time you get a second movie, that you could all age them up to be like, now they're 19 or now they're 21. It doesn't matter. Like, because again, they were trying to be probably like 14, 15-year-olds, and probably some of them are around that age or not, but it's fine.
But I will say though that this movie, as like, if we get a sequel to this movie, great. But if we don't, I'm just as happy.
Yep.
Because I really feel this is a nice button to a trilogy.
Yep. A true Ghostbusters trilogy. So it is, again, I'm happy if there's more. If not, it's fine by me. Any other final thoughts, John, before we start wrapping this up on Ghostbusters Afterlife?
No, I'm questioning, I guess, the negative reviews, but I can see like what Rob was saying was there is kind of a little bit of a bait and switch with the Paul Rudd thing. You're going in thinking, hey, Paul Rudd is like the star of this movie, and then he's basically a side character. But other than that,
couldn't show the other characters without ruining the movie. You don't want to show like, Egon and like Beckman and like you don't want to show the other.
No, I think it's good. If they started showing a lot of the original cast, then it would have been even more of a bait and switch because they literally waltz in at the end and help close the curtains or whatever you want to call it. So yeah.
This is the Linda Carter Wonder Woman cameo where she shows up at the end of at the German Christmas market. Be like, "Ha, I'm here." So and who would have expected Linda Carter to be in it? We had a CGI version of her, but it is what it is. Rob, final thoughts?
I gotta say I was a bit disappointed with Bokeem Woodbine's inclusion as the cop who throws them in the slammer. And he does that stupid throwaway line where she's like, well, don't I get a phone call? And he goes, well, who are you going to call? Okay. Great. And that's how they lead to calling Dan Aykroyd. But I thought that whole sequence in the police station and making him like the bad cop, which by the way, you never see again, right? Like the cop station are going crazy and you see the old white sheriff and everybody else. And now that's gone. And
it's a day's work, Rob. They couldn't afford it for more than one day.
I just thought, so when we're talking about trimming some of this extra, like that would have been a scene that, hey, it's a cool deleted scene. I don't know if we really needed it. I guess finally, I just want to say, like, I really hope that people give it a chance. I think the negative reviews are just because people are stuck in the mud because it's not their Ghostbusters. It's not meant to be your Ghostbusters though. Right. But it's not meant to be your Ghostbusters. What you saw in 1984, you were X number of years old. You grew up with this over 30 years, close to 30 years. This is for our kids. This is for a new generation. This is for a new entry. And this is a bit of a nostalgic trip for you, but it's not your Ghostbusters. And I think that we oftentimes forget about that when you have these revisiting reboots or whatever of our childhood properties. We've watched them hundreds and hundreds of times, and you're never going to replicate that. So I really enjoyed it. I think people should give it a chance. Last thing I do want to say though is that I just got news this morning. Well, I didn't. It was broken. Is that Dan Aykroyd's brother Peter Aykroyd, who was a member in SNL, he just passed away last night. So our condolences to Dan Aykroyd's family. That's kind of crazy. On the weekend of Ghostbusters opening up, his brother passes away. So, yeah.
Rob, to your point, it is a different split in movies because again, we're expecting comedy and whatnot the first two movies. So when coming to this, the pacing's a little different, the story's a little different. Intrinsically, it's a different film, but it's people want the tone to be the same, and this wasn't ever going to be it. Jason Reitman is not a comedy director. He's never been one. Think about his movies. Thank You for Smoking, Juno. Like these are all nuanced films with different young adult. These are different films with different, like The Front Runner. Like he does very, arts house kind of very particular film. So his sensibility was always going to be this movie, and he's not Ivan Reitman. So again, it was always going to be different. And I think they got it off the ground because the two Reitmans got it there and push it. It wouldn't have existed without the two of them to bring back the old folks to do this. But to your point, it's the third of the three movies. It would be Ghostbusters 1, Ghostbusters 2, Afterlife, and then the other Ghostbusters film in a ranking. It's just fine. Like it's okay. There's slow at times, but that's the nature of this movie. That's why they wanted to make it this way, to build up the ghosts and what it was not zany like Slimer shows up and running through walls and as you guys talked about there's a lot of raunchy jokes, a lot of things that happen in that Ghostbuster movies that really couldn't do that today. So they had to change it to make it, especially with kids. You're not going to do weird stuff with the kids there. So it is what it is. But yeah, all of us would recommend watching it. John. Oh, whoa. Speaking of Slimer, John, where can they find you on the internet?
Hey, get out of here. Yeah, so Heroes World Online on the YouTube, the Facebook, the Instagram, and you can find us there. A little dark to get in here. And then Heroes World Podcast on the audio. If you're on Spotify or iTunes or whatever your podcast service is, follow us there. And then if you want to check us out in person, we are on 8601 Warden Avenue in Markham, Ontario. You can find us address on the website. We got tons and tons of stuff in stock. So if you want to check us out, we should have what you need for that special someone or yourself for holiday time.
Yes. As again, go to the store, support big or small purchases, most welcome. If you're unable to, then do it digitally. We can ship stuff to you from Heroes World, or like, subscribe, put the bell. Any comments, you can do it on iTunes, even if it's who you're gonna call or if they're great, would be appreciated on iTunes. That really helps to get exposure.
Only the tiger.
Yeah, or let us know your thoughts on Ghostbusters Afterlife. Are you down? You want to see more? Paul Rudd, Sexiest Man Alive? ? Who knows? So please do that as helpful. Rob, what's going on the Sidekick Show this week?
Yeah, so tomorrow, I think it was tomorrow, we are revisiting the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy. If you have not seen it ever, which would be weird, or if it's been a long time since you've seen it, well, guess what? It's on Amazon Prime right now, so you can watch all three. We're going to be discussing it. Like, we've got Spider-Man No Way Home coming out in just a few short weeks. And the rumor is Tobey Maguire is coming back into the web suit.
You don't say. You don't say.
You know what? Take it with a grain of salt. Take it with a grain of salt. So does this original trilogy hold up? Is Spider-Man 2 still one of the pinnacles of the ultimate superhero movies? Is it the best Spider-Man movie that we've had thus far? We're going to talk about it tomorrow night, 8:15 p.m. live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. Join us, Heroes World Sidekick Show, and we'll chat with you then, webheads.
Yes, true believers. So thank you so much for joining us today in our very brief review. We would love to talk more, but at the same time, as we want you to discover it on your own. So go out there, watch the movie or on VOD. Let us know your thoughts. Thank you much for joining us. It was a much better experience than both the last two shows we watched. So huzzah. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
All right.
See you
Thank you,
later.
everybody.
Thanks,
Bye.
guys.
Thanks, dude.